You're now listening to Directing Magic with your host, Marquette Jones.
Hello, and welcome back to Directing Magic podcast. Today, I'm really excited to talk to Morgan Dameron. She is the director of Different Flowers, and I'm going to allow her to tell us what the movie is about.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on. It's really a thrill to get to talk to you. I've been an avid listener and sort of followed all the Directing Magic adventures on Twitter for a while. So This is a real joy. Thank you. Different Flowers is my first feature film. I wrote, directed, and produced it. And it's the story of two sisters. It's about a young woman who is, on the morning of her wedding, gets cold feet, and she runs out, leaving her fiancé at the altar with the help of her younger sister, and they go on this whirlwind road trip to their grandmother's farm, and they end up in a small town and have to rekindle their relationship and put the pieces of her life back together, and they meet lots of colorful characters along the way. And ultimately, it's about their bond. It's about these sisters coming back together.
That is the thing that attracted to me to the story, is this idea of the sister relationship. I want to say I don't have a sister. That's not exactly true, but I wasn't raised with a sister.
Right.
Yeah, I'll leave it like that. But like my mom has tons of sisters, and my grandmother was a twin, and I've always looked at those relationships with a little bit of envy, like, dang, they seem like they have this thing, this bond that nobody else can really get in the middle of.
Totally. Well, and I feel like if you don't have a sister, I have two younger sisters and a younger brother. And even if you weren't raised with a sister, everyone has a relationship that has that push and pull. Somebody that you just can't seem to shake, no matter how many fights you get in, no matter what trouble you get up to. And I think everyone has someone like that. And I really wanted to explore that idea of sort of when you're at your worst and you're left with someone who both recognizes that you're your worst and doesn't allow you to linger there.
Oh, nice.
You know, and sort of that idea of being also out in the country. I grew up going to my grandparents' farm in Moberly, Missouri. And that idea of being out in the middle of nowhere with the one person who you might not want to be out there with.
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of ripe for comedy.
I love that you have one of the characters being, like, they're so opposite of each other, but they still seem to bring out the best in each other in a certain sort of way.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and they also know each other's buttons. You know, they definitely have had the same kind of fights for years and years and years. And now, you know, a lot of things start to bubble to the surface that maybe they haven't dealt with appropriately before.
Have you? Did you always know that you wanted your first feature to be at home?
I did. That was the goal. I really wrote the script for that purpose. I had grown up, I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, which is where we filmed the movie. And I'd always wanted to make films there. And in fact, the year before Different Flowers, I had been petitioning our congressmen and women to pass a local film incentive. And we haven't gotten to the state level yet. We're still working on it. But we do have a citywide one in Kansas City that we ended up actually not getting. We went through the whole application process. They had at the time a 7.5% incentive, and we didn't meet the minimum spend. So, you know, I'm so glad that we went through that process, because we were a feature film that came, you know, because I live in Los Angeles now. So we came back to Kansas City to film, and we also, you know, submitted so much feedback just going through that process that now they've changed the requirements. There's a lower minimum spend, and they've upped the percentage to 10% for this year. So that's a huge gain for a city like Kansas City to attract more production. And so even though we didn't actually get to be a part of it, I'm still thrilled that we were able to film there. I mean, just the enthusiasm alone was worth it. There's just nothing like sort of having that feeling of being embraced by the city that raised you, you know. At our premiere, our mayor came, which was just wonderful.
Nice.
Yeah.
I need pictures or it didn't happen.
Oh yeah, there's some good ones.
I'm actually from the Midwest also. I'm from Ohio.
Yeah.
So when I graduated, well, my thesis film for film school, we went back to Ohio to shoot. And I always said I would go back to shoot a feature there. So I'm really, really curious about that process. And to hear you say, well, I advocated for an incentive and da-da-da. And I'm like,
You've got to do it. Well, Ohio has a great film commissioner that's sort of working for, it's funny how, the circles are so small, the Midwest. I feel like all the film people know each other. I was just talking to another filmmaker who wants to go back to make a film he wrote in Ohio. I think he's from Cincinnati. Nice. And my sister went to college at Wittenberg, which is right outside of Dayton. And it is, there's a lot of enthusiasm, even if the infrastructure might be a little different than what we're used to in New York or Los Angeles. There are people who are pursuing a career in film. It might be more commercial based. It might be more industrial training video based, but it's still there. And I think people are hungry for longer stories, for features, for TV shows. Absolutely.
And to see where they're from on film.
Yes. I think that really resonates with people. And that was another, reason why I wanted to showcase it was you just don't see it in a positive light very often, especially in Missouri. We get a lot of Ozark stories and, there's some great conflict there. There are, sort of dark and intriguing corners, but you don't often see the landscape highlighted. You don't often see how beautiful it is and how kind the people are. And those things are really important to me. I feel like they really shaped a lot of my sort of artistic sensibilities. And so, we tried to capture them the best we could in different flowers. And it's cool touring the movie all over. We've kind of been all over the country this year. And so many people saying, oh, my husband's from there, or I drove through there on a road trip and I recognize this place. And that's always really cool. And I feel that it helps a lot that it's authentic too. There's a lot of films that say they're set somewhere and have to shoot elsewhere for business reasons or, sometimes creative reasons. If you want to, a director wants to stay in the same city where he lives or something like that. Or she lives more often now. But I really wanted to have it be set there and showcase Kansas City. And so I'm really glad we were able to do it.
I think that the landscape it feels like another character in your film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. You have some really nice images. Okay. And I may be biased because I'm from the Midwest and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I feel like it's a little bit like, the rose-colored glasses, every shot we had of the landscape in post, I was like, we have to keep it in. It's so beautiful. And I'm so grateful to, my editor, Nate Orloff, and cinematographer, Jordan McNeil, who were like, we have plenty. Like, use it sparingly. Like, can we just linger on this shot of the sunset? Yeah, we got a little crazy at the end. There's like 2 sunsets in a row, but you got to do it.
You got it. I mean, magic hour is called that for a reason.
It's called that for a reason, Yeah.
So how long were you at home pre-producing?
I was working full time in LA up until June, and we shot in July. So we shot in the end of July, like the 31st. Okay. August 1st. So I did a scout sort of at the beginning of July, and then I was there for 2 weeks before we started shooting. So we sort of locked all our locations about a month before. We were still searching for some, like the farmhouse in particular was really hard to find because I had such a specific image in mind. And the script called for very specific sort of locations within a location. We needed an open floor plan. We needed a guest bedroom. We needed a pond. We needed a barn. They're sort of just layering all these different things. And we, came into contact with this amazing family who they had sort of the ideal house. We had a locations manager, Erin Picardi, who's actually a friend of mine from high school, who's a creator and a storyteller. But at the time she was a realtor. And so she had access to an amazing wealth of networks, just through sort of I think she's, in these realtor networks. And so it was a realtor in her organization's cousins, like friends, farm. And that's how we found our farmhouse. I mean, you just can't make it up.
That's, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
My sister's cousin's brother.
Yeah.
That's what's up, though. That's how it works.
No.
That is how it works.
It is.
How did you find the local talent?
We flew in sort of our main cast from Los Angeles, and our casting director, Jessica Sherman, really honed in on an amazing cast with me. We did auditions. And then for our local cast, most of them are people who had either been in short films that I made when I was growing up there, and are, theater actors and, sort of working actors in Kansas City. In particular, Nancy Marcy, who was my theater teacher when I was in high school. She did this master class at this theater called The Coterie, which is like a children's theater in Kansas City. She plays the biker mom, just as an homage to her. And this town of Marcy is named after her. So that was kind of cool to have her in the movie. And then a lot of the like little roles are, like friends and family. Both my parents are in the opening. My mom is the chef. My dad's the reverend, and my my dear college friend who lives in New York now, she plays the wedding assistant. My principal from middle school rolls the bass around and is in the quartet in the church. The gardener in the opening is our cinematographer's mom. The couple that walks in the church is like my mentor, filmmaking mentor, Sue Vickery, and her husband, Jay. So it's just a lot of hodgepodge little cameos that are so much fun when I watch it, because, there's so much history behind everyone. Yeah.
Did you say your cinematographer's mom, is he from Kansas City also?
He is. He's from Overland Park, Kansas. Yeah. So I grew up out north, and then you cross the river and go out south, and that's where he grew up. So that was amazing too, because he had a connection and understood that part of the world as well. And our main camera operator is from Manhattan, Kansas. So we had quite a few Kansas, Missouri connections throughout the team.
So what is it like? I mean, I know what it's like, but could you just say what it's like to try to produce while you're working full time?
It's really hard. And I think the hardest part was we did our Kickstarter while I was still working full time. And that was really intense, because it's sort of a full-time job. I mean, just the social media outreach alone, promoting and finding creative ways. It's just so much creative energy, sort of matched with, business savvy and trying to learn as you're doing it, because there's some things you just can't anticipate. We had a big plan for our Kickstarter sort of before we launched. We had, on these markers, this is going to be the messaging. Here's some, we made a bunch of graphics. And then in the first couple of days, we bypassed all the goals we thought we would hit. So then all that stuff was obsolete. We had to come up with a whole new plan, which is a great problem to have, but definitely threw us for a loop.
What do you think made it so successful out the gate?
I think, the secret was that we launched on my birthday. And
okay. So
that's what it's all about.
We're having that conversation right now, and my birthday is coming, and we're like, maybe not. And now you're telling me maybe I should go back to the original plan. Okay.
Yeah, because what you want to do is try, because you don't have the money to drive people to your content the way that an organization, major organization would. So you want to try and use the things that are naturally occurring on social media to drive people there. So on your birthday, Facebook tells everyone it's your birthday. So that was, the reasoning behind that. It was also, we had calculated, okay, it takes 30 days to get your funds, and we had to put certain deposits down for equipment by, I think it was like July 12th. My birthday is May 12th. So we were like, okay, if we do a 30-day campaign, it'll be exactly 30 days and we'll get the money and we can put the deposit down.
Gotcha.
So it kind of worked out on both ends, but I mean, there's so much behind that. It's definitely difficult to break through the noise, especially now with everything going on in the world. It's not a climate where people feel like they can, even though the arts should be supported, it feels like sometimes the arts are the first thing, go on the chopping block when you have a bunch of causes that you want to contribute to. So yeah, it's a difficult moment to try and stay positive too, because so many of these campaigns, I think, go into, we need it, we're desperate, and people respond so much more to, this is going to be fun. Like, let's take a chance and do something together. But it's definitely, it's an exercise in just trying to find the light, for sure.
Mm-hmm. My birthday's in December. So on one hand, yes, launch on your birthday. On the other hand, everyone is spending their money on Christmas.
Oh, right.
Which is the story of my life, but still.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's a hard call, but then you can also say, if you want to get me a Christmas present, this is what you can get me.
Hey, Christmas/birthday. That's
well, I wish you so much luck with that. It's definitely an ordeal, but it's worth it. And it connects you so strongly with your audience. I think that was a huge step up for us right out of the gate. So many of our extras, we have this big scene with like 200 extras, and most of them found out about it. Well, either they're my family, giant family, or they found out about it through our Kickstarter campaign, because it had been passed around the city and people kind of heard about it. And then once you say, oh, here's an opportunity to come actually check it out in person, people got really excited about that.
So that's the Kickstarter stuff. You exceeded your goals.
We did, yeah.
Which is amazing. That's always
crazy.
So once you got into production and you got all your beautiful shots of the town. Oh, sorry. Let me go back, because casting. So casting your lead characters. What were you looking for before you got the cast that you have? What were you looking for in the characters that you wrote?
It is always hard after you live with it for so long to go back and think, well, what was different? What changed as a result of these new voices coming on board? But I do think in this situation, we got really lucky with the people we found. They were so perfect. I mean, and it really feels like the story is the story I set out to tell. There weren't any huge, out of left field surprises. There's definitely good surprises. For example, with Millie, the thing I was really, I didn't know how to look for in an audition. I picked this scene that was sort of this epic scene where she's crying and then she's laughing. It's the bathroom scene, but in the original script, the bathroom scene's about twice as long. We found that people didn't need that long to empathize with her. It was captured through just putting a camera on her. But yeah, in the audition scene, it was a bit longer, and I was really looking for someone who could get to that vulnerable place and then make us laugh. And that's such a hard thing to do. And you don't see it very often because it is so hard, I think. And Emma Bell came in to read, and just from the very beginning, she was so open, as her character, and really, I remember I had her do it a couple times, I think, and she took direction well, which makes sense because she's a very talented working actress. But I didn't really expect her to be as funny as she was. And she was sort of making us giggle. And I thought that was really, I knew that she could act. I didn't know if she had, dabbled in comedy at all, but she was such a natural at that. And then with the character of Emma, I remember Hope coming in, and we just wanted to hang out with her. She was so much fun, and her timing, she's so smart and really just with it on her sort of comedic timing and her punchlines. And she brings a great sort of attitude level that, is a great contrast to Millie. And I mean, that was all in the room, and we didn't do any chemistry reads. So that was sort of the risk we took, was they're playing sisters. You have to create sisters out of nothing. They'd never met before or worked together. And I didn't know that I was allowed to do chemistry reads. I guess if I had, it would have been helpful, but we just cast them. We just thought they looked, they felt the part. And then they just out of nowhere developed an amazing chemistry. I mean, from day one, they really had to bring it, and they did. And, we had a table read. So that was sort of the first time everyone met each other out in LA before we flew out. But it was a pretty rushed process because we had our start date and we couldn't push. Just because of everyone, we had a very tiny window where everyone was available. So we just had to get it done.
How many days did you shoot?
We shot for 18 days.
Okay.
And we had 2 days where my sister and I were the stunt drivers doing a bunch of exteriors with our cinematographer. We had 18 shooting days. And a couple of those were really road trip days. They were driving out to all the different roadside attractions and getting a lot of those the driving scenes and things like that. But yeah, and then, Shelley was another sort of godsend for our project where she's a comedic titan. She's someone that I'd looked up to for years, and the type of person that you think will, somebody on her team will see the script and, say, it's a first-time director, forget about it. And she read it and she loved it, and she really resonated with the grandmother character, even though we had to age her a little bit to play a grandmother of these women. And then once we cast Romy as the mom as well, we sort of had to work out the math and make sure that everything worked out. But she recalls this moment where she was reading the script, and the name Mildred in particular, which I always wanted the grandmother and granddaughter to have the same name, but the granddaughter to use a nickname. It just felt like a sort of a nice through line in their characters, that there's these elements of the grandmother that pop out in both of these granddaughters, and their connection is really special. And she, I guess, when she was at Second City, she played a character that was named Mildred. She had a voice and a stature, and she would do improv as this character. And so when she was reading the script, and I mean, I never knew that. I don't know how you could know that. She, saw the name, and she said it was like a little red light going off, and she had to see where this was going to go.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
It's kismet.
Well, and I'm sure it wasn't this in this case, but the name Emma, like you had the name of the character before you cast Emma in.
Yes, well, and then Emma plays Millie, and then it just felt so. I for some reason it felt like it captured this sort of free spirited nature of her, and we'd kind of gone too far. I didn't want to change it at that point. So then we're calling out Emma, and both it's like a character or the person. Yeah, so names hold a lot of meaning.
They do. What about so are you the oldest in your
Yeah, I'm the oldest. Yeah.
And do you have a little sister that you felt like kind of modeled the opposite of you in your personal life?
We're all so different. All my siblings. My oldest younger sister is, she's in med school. She's going to be a doctor. And my other two siblings are I mean, even though they're both more, I mean, my youngest sister is a photographer. She actually was our on-set photographer for different flowers. And my brother is a little more technically inclined. I mean, they both write and make short videos, but he's he was in post. He's a little bit more drawn to that side of things. But it is interesting, personality-wise. I know, for example, like on Halloween, like my candy's always like spilled everywhere. Like you find some later, like I eat it on the way home. When we were growing up, my little sister would like line all of hers up like by color and like by variety. There's a very extensive trading mechanism. And so I guess there are some tendencies like that. But when I was, writing Millie and Emma, I sort of thought about them more as facets of my own personality, sort of arguing with each other, more than I did really modeling after my sisters, because I guess it was a little easier for me to understand their motivations if I sort of put myself in their shoes. Sort of at different points in my life, like what was I like at 21 versus 25 versus now,
Sure.
And it was fun also. I mean, it's always fun to write someone who's the opposite of you and who's taking choices, chances and making choices that you might not otherwise in your real life. You get to sort of live out these different variations of how things could go. So it was so much fun to write. And it definitely was anytime that they got too similar, it was nice having that back and forth because I could just switch one character around and, it would lead to a whole new host of problems. It was a blast.
How long did it take you to write it?
I wrote it really quickly. I think it took me about 2 months, which is nice. A record for me. Yeah. Well, and it really was born out of the idea of, okay, we're going to make a movie in the summer. Now I have to write a script that we can film. And so I think it actually benefited from having, well, A, deadlines, and B, having an idea of what the limitations were. So, we knew, okay, has to be as few characters as possible, so there's sort of 2 main characters, and everybody else comes in for a couple days or so. And I tried to base it as much around the farmhouse as I could. But then, of course, we added the road trip element, which blows the whole thing out of the water. But it started there, at least. And, just really trying to think about having the place helped so much too. Kansas City in general. Okay, you've got the city. There's beautiful churches. You've got the countryside. You've got a farmhouse. There's these darling towns. We filmed Marcy, which is where the diner and the grocery store and the vintage store are in Weston, Missouri, which is a great little town. And, just knowing that those are your possibilities sort of leads you to those places rather than it being the other way around, which, I don't know if it's a model for screenwriting per se, but it definitely, it made the process a lot smoother in this situation because I was like, I couldn't write anything that we couldn't film because I knew we were going to film it. Yeah.
And you did a lot of the producing yourself as well?
I did. Yeah. I had an amazing team. Well, and Shelley's a producer, which to me was just sort of a seal of approval, and support from someone who wants to like lend their name. Like that meant a lot. But then, I had my fellow producer, David Karp, who, he helped a lot with the fundraising and sort of logistics. I mean, because we flew a lot of people out to Kansas City and put them up and had to feed them and provide transportation and housing for them. So he took on a lot of those logistics. And then our co-producer, Elisa Naso, is also just a rock star in terms of sort of day-to-day production. So she handled a lot of that while I was directing. And so it was sort of we were the trifecta. And that is definitely a challenge when you're filming, is dealing with these producer issues that arise, and having to prioritize sort of your creative brain, with your producer brain, and how do you navigate those situations. And I don't know if it would have been possible without our amazing AD team. Actually, when we were filming, our first AD, who's also my boyfriend, Jacob Braids, is
nice,
just incredibly talented. Yeah, I know. And it works out because he's really tall. So when he talks, people just sort of naturally listen. And so he's definitely got that advantage over me. And then our second AD, Kit Connors, I mean, they really made things run so smoothly. And the scheduling was done with so much care in terms of it being my first feature. So sort of, front loading things that were a little easier and more akin to what I'm used to directing on a short scale, as well as for the characters, and really being thoughtful about character development and putting some of the more emotionally wrenching scenes later in the schedule once we've had a chance to work together. Because we had a little bit more flexibility with locations, because a lot of them were, we did have to shift we shot Sunday to Thursday. We didn't shoot so regular Monday to Friday, because a lot of our locations were closing for us or would be closed on Sunday. So we would shoot there on Sunday. And, they really were able to kind of move mountains for me in that way. So even though they don't have a producer credit, I definitely consider them producers in that regard, because, they're negotiating all of these different elements that, it just wouldn't be possible without. And a lot of our crew as well, you always wear a lot of hats on independent film, but we had one powerhouse woman, Heidi Bowles, who was in charge of hair, makeup, and wardrobe.
I saw that. I saw that in the credits. I was like, oh, she was busy.
Yeah. She's incredible. She's really amazing. And we had a fleet of sort of up-and-coming filmmakers who are our PA team, who were just outstanding. And a lot of people who had just reached out to me after the Kickstarter and said they were interested in film and wanted to work. And it was really an amazing
What
team.
would you say for you next time, for your next feature film? What would you do differently?
I think I would probably,
besides just have money in the pot, and
right? Yeah, exactly. I try to give myself more time, sort of more prep time, because I was doing so much producing and pre-production. I didn't have a lot of time to just visualize, and so I had to make a lot of decisions, on the gun. And I got really lucky this time because I had written the script, so I'd done a lot of that work when I was writing, but I really had to rely heavily on that. I found myself, thank goodness I had come up with the words, because I don't think I would have, you want as a director time to get it in your bones and to really examine it from all angles. And, I was concentrating on where the next day's lunch was going to come from in pre-production. And I would have shifted my focus more to tone and structure and arc, and just to make sure that, I really was prepared. I think I made a lot of on-the-fly decisions that they worked out in the moment and for this particular project, but I wouldn't take that same risk next time. Yeah, this one was so close to me personally that I think I was able to do that, but I don't know if I will in the future. But I don't know, maybe I'll just be an on-the-fly.
I think that is overrated.
Yeah, I think anytime you can get more prep, the better. Yeah. I would have loved to have, and it was a budget concern, but rehearsal time as well would have been great. We had a couple days where we had conversations, me and Emma and Hope, but having a more extensive, rehearsal time for some of these bigger scenes would have been really helpful.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of things, but I can't let you go without asking you about J.J. Abrams, because we have to ask about. So one thing that folks should know is that Morgan used to be the assistant for J.J. Abrams, director of lots and lots of things. Bad Robot, I don't know, Star Wars. So it is Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
Star Wars and Star Trek. Okay.
Both of them.
Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, do not judge me that I didn't know that already.
Oh, no, please. I wouldn't have either.
But yeah, so advice that he gave you going into shooting your first film?
I mean, I think the biggest thing was just his vote of confidence meant so much. And to have someone, who you've worked for, who you really admire, who has tackled these, incredible projects with such ease and, a ton of hard work, but, with real grace, and to have them say, oh, you want to be a director? You're going to direct? That's exactly what you should be doing. Nice. Is awesome. And it really empowered me. I'm a big believer in giving yourself opportunities, and I was going to do it come hell or high water, but having a vote of confidence, you have to celebrate those moments. And that was really, really cool. And it's just, in general, that experience was so cool as a creator to be sort of in the eye of the storm of a huge project, and to see the patience and the generosity and the talent of everyone involved. It really makes you want to embody those things, both as a filmmaker and as a human being, and just to keep calm and to handle problems with ease, I think, is the biggest lesson that I took away, because, whether you're on a $500 million set or a, $5 set, you still have to man the ship, and you have to keep a clear head. And I think that was definitely a big lesson for me.
Mm-hmm. And so when you moved out from Kansas City to Los Angeles, because I'm teaching right now, and it's a big question for my students, like,
sure,
when I move to LA, what should I expect?
Yeah. Well, I definitely got lucky because I came out here to go to USC. So I had a little bit of a bubble when I got out here, of a community, of a built-in, 4-year college where I got to slowly get to know the city and figure out where I wanted to live and to make connections and do internships and start to build my network out in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have the, I'm getting on a bus and I'm arriving experience. Even if it felt that way a little bit, you're still in sort of this completely new place. But I think the biggest thing is you had to start building your network before you get there. Reach out to groups that, like Women in Film, or, there's a great directors group, the Alliance of Women Directors. If you've done a feature film, Film Fatales is invaluable. And start to build your community before you're in that place. Start to make those connections, because most of the time that's the most difficult part, is feeling like you're alone. And if you know that you're not, and now we have the advent of the internet where, there are Facebook groups galore for whatever your interest may be. If you're a director or a sound technician or a screenwriter, I think that is invaluable. And it certainly has helped me in the transition out of college and into the city as well. And then the great thing is just to start working on sets, even if you're, PAing on, somebody's web series, that's still, those are, probably 10 to 12 new people that you can meet who can help you get on the next one, or maybe they'll help you next time. So much of filmmaking is about that team and building that team. Most of my collaborators on Different Flowers were either from college, from USC, from working on sets with people, or from getting to know people through work, and making those connections that way. So yeah, I think that would be sort of the biggest thing, is to figure out ways to build your community, because, then you're kind of halfway there.
I think that's exactly right. And so I love to close on something positive. So let's see, I'm saying, let's see, I don't ask this every time. What is something that you're excited about right now that's not necessarily film or television related?
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited about so many things. I just got given as a gift this tape dispenser that's a unicorn that has rainbow tape in it. I'm really excited about that. I'm really looking forward to the holidays. It's my favorite time of year because I get to spend time with my family. So I'm really excited for that. And I guess in film and entertainment, I'm applying to a bunch of fellowships right now, and it's exciting that people are taking such a closer look at more inclusive voices. So I'm really excited to see what that brings, to our film and television and commercial and digital landscape. I think that's what I'm excited about.
That's very awesome. Well, before you go, please tell people how to find you, how to find the movie.
Absolutely. Yes. Please watch Different Flowers if you haven't gotten a chance to before listening to this podcast. It's available on iTunes and Amazon and Google Play, and all easily accessible through differentflowersmovie.com.
And your social?
Yeah, and I'm Morgan Dameron on Twitter and Morgan E. Dameron on Instagram. Come say hi.
Come say hi. All right. Thank you so much for being here. This has been a true joy.
Thank you.
Happy holidays. We're recording this right before Thanksgiving. I think it'll go up really soon, so I'm relatively current this time. And and also, you guys, a link to her movie will be on the website when the show goes up.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. What a wonderful conversation.
Take care.
Good luck. Take care.
Bye.
You've been listening to Directing Magic with Marquette Jones. Be sure to visit directingmagic.com for past episodes and other information relating to the show. Also, be sure to subscribe and rate and comment on iTunes. Until next time, bye-bye.